discrimination, and an overall lack of awareness about mental health. I have seen this. As the 6 years that I've been working with the community, I've definitely seen this all the time with almost every client that I've encountered. So when I saw this, I was like, yep. So these are just some of the challenges we're up against. Now, I know no one likes statistics. I know they're boring, but I have a few of them just so that we can look at the facts that we're up against and we're seeing what's going on. All right, so some of the facts about minority and mental health is LGBTQ individuals are more than twice as likely as heterosexual individuals to have a mental health disorder in their lifetime, more than twice. And I want you to think of the climate we're in. I want you to look at where we're at as a society, as a country, and look what the LGBTQ community is going through. So this makes sense. The rate of suicide attempts is 4 times greater for lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth than that of heterosexual youth. 4 times greater, guys. That's mind-blowing. About 1 in 3 women experience sexual, physical violence, and/or intimidation by a partner in their lifetime. Most of us here are women. So I want you just to look around to your left, to your right. That means that at least one of y'all, you have a woman next to you, you have another woman next to you. That means that at least one of y'all has been a victim of that. And I can attest to that as a therapist. I mean, I've worked with so many different populations, and one of the populations was, well, it's mostly women. I've worked with mostly women, and I can tell you, most of my clients have been victims. Women are less likely than men to disclose problems with alcohol use to their healthcare provider, so we're blindsided. You know, we don't know what's going on. They don't report it because of the stigma. They don't want to share because they're scared. So then we can't help them because we don't know what's going on. So that is something that's happening, and we need to get better at it. Bilingual patients are evaluated differently when interviewed in English as opposed to in Spanish, and Hispanics are more frequently undertreated. So most of the populations that I've worked with have been Latinos, and because I'm a Spanish-speaking therapist and I can actually give therapy in Spanish since it's my first language, and I've been able to do that, so I get like all the Spanish-speaking caseloads come to me. And I have had to fight for Spanish-informed consent, even though it's illegal not to offer that in their language. I still have to fight for that. And literally I have gotten people tell me, supervisors tell me, well, we're in America, so they need to learn English. And then I have had to really advocate for my clients and almost gotten fired several times. So, but I got my informed consent in Spanish. So, because my clients need to know what they're signing. They need to know what they're doing, and then they're like, well, just translate it. I'm like, no, it's not the same. Okay. So Hispanics are more likely to report poor communication with their healthcare provider. So that also has to do a lot with the language barrier, and also again the stigma. Because let me tell you, I don't know, but as a Latina woman and also Lebanese, you don't go to therapy and you don't air your dirty laundry. What is wrong with you? You're putting the family to shame. So that also has a lot to do with that. Okay. Studies show that older Hispanic adults and youth are especially vulnerable to psychological stresses associated with immigration and acculturation. I moved here when I was 10 years old, and let me tell y'all, it is traumatic. People don't say this enough. People don't express it enough. They don't think about it enough, but it was the most traumatic event ever. Coming from Mexico to here, with my parents, my 4 siblings, and I was very fortunate because my dad's an American citizen, so I flew, you know, in the country. I became an American citizen very quick. I was fortunate. I'm privileged. I'm aware of that. I can't imagine other people who have it 1,000 times much worse. I was traumatized moving here. I was like, oh my gosh, and then acculturating, that takes years. So it's very traumatic. So as a therapist, we need to be aware of that trauma and take it into account. Only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receives it. 1 in 3. African Americans often receive poor quality of care and lack access to culturally competent care. So that's something we really need to work on. We are missing a lot of culturally competent providers, and we will talk about that more. So, barriers that I have seen with previous minority clients. This is what I have experienced as a therapist. So they're not welcome. They don't feel welcome at the practice. And you know what? I can see that because I'm also a client. I go to therapy. I love my therapist. Finally found her after years of searching, and I found her 4 years ago, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, so thankful for you. But I have been in places where I didn't feel welcome. And so many of my clients, by the time they get to me, I'm definitely not their first therapist, which I admire because they kept trying. So they get to me and they're like, I just didn't feel welcome by the therapist. So the family, many minorities. So many like Latinos or African Americans, Asians, they are more collective. So it's important to remember that when we're talking about minorities, they are coming from a collective perspective, not such an individual. So the family also needs to be included. I remember when I would go to therapy, I would speak about my mom, and they were like, well, you just have to leave your house. You're already 18. Leave. And that's what therapists would tell me. And I was like, no, you don't understand. It doesn't work like that. And so I would switch therapists, right? I wouldn't go back, and I wasn't being heard. I was like, no, you don't understand. And this is my experience, and everybody's different, and not all Latinos are the same, but I was like, I don't get to leave my house until I'm married. What's wrong with you? I was like, no, I can't just leave at 18. Like, you don't understand. Or at least I need to have my bachelor's. That is the agreement between my parents and myself. So they didn't want to deal with the family. They didn't want to deal with that aspect. And so, and it was also, these were Latino therapists too. So I was like, okay, so they were being competent. And so my clients go through this as well. Beliefs are rejected or judged. A lot of the times I was working for the undocumented minors that would get detained, and so then I was their therapist. And one of the questions was, do you see people, right, when you're evaluating them? And so my question was, do you ever have, do you ever see people, things that are not there? Many of them would go, oh yes, my abuelita came to visit me one time, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I got it. But as a therapist would count that as hallucinations. And I was like, no, that is not a hallucination. So I would always fight that. And they were like, oh, you know what? So then you have to go through this serious incident report. And I was like, no, like, they're not hallucinating. So on many of the times, those beliefs are rejected or judged. And so then they don't want to share anything. Lack of insurance or uninsured, lack of support, lack of resources, that's a huge one. And that lack of resources is what impedes many to actually seeking help. Lack of services in their emotional language. Just the other day, I was working, and so I only do groups. I work very part-time right now. So I was doing a group, only one client showed up. And so I was like, okay, let's have an individual session. Well, she speaks primarily Spanish. And so she was like, I am so glad nobody's here. And she was like, es que déjame te cuento, blah, 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 blah. She just busted out, right? And then we had a really good session, and at the end she said, I'm so glad that it was you tonight, because I really needed to just be able to communicate in my emotional language. And I was like, well, I'm glad it was me too, So it's good, because even though they do go to therapy, sometimes you can't really express yourself as great. Like, I go to therapy, and I literally needed to find someone who spoke Spanish, because in case I needed to just let it all out one time, and we do Spanish and English in therapy. There's certain things that I just feel I can express better in Spanish, and many people feel that way, but they're embarrassed. So when you ask them, oh, are you okay with an English-speaking therapist? They're gonna say yes, because they're embarrassed, but that doesn't mean that they're able to express themselves. Just sometimes words will leave them, and they can't express themselves as much as they can do in their emotional language. And then of course the stigma associated with mental illness. I mean, so my mom has several diagnoses. I come from a household where I was exposed to mental illness from very, very young. And even though I was exposed to it, she's Lebanese, my dad is Mexican, and her family was like, she's crazy. Like, my mom was labeled crazy from my dad always was like, you don't need to go to therapy. That's only for crazy people. You know, so like your mom needs to go to therapy, but you don't need to go to therapy. So even when I became a therapist, my dad would be like, I don't believe in therapy. And I was like, I'm a therapist. How can you say that? Now he's come around. Now he's like, cause I ran my presentation to him and he was like, yeah, you bring good points. But that took forever for that man to get there. So the stigma is big, and we're taught not to, don't expose your dirty laundry to people. Yeah, I don't know you. I've been told that several times. I don't know you. Why am I gonna tell you my problems? I'm like, all right, fair. So after a long time, we build trust, and it happens. But I mean, they're like, you're a stranger, like I'm not gonna tell you what's going on with my family. So, and a lot of people tell me I'm not crazy. That's how many of my sessions start, especially when I see Latino men. Let me tell you, as soon as they sit down, they look at me and they go, I'm here because my wife dragged me, but I'm not crazy. And I'm like, well, that's good to know. First of all, we don't use that word anymore. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, and I'm glad you're not. So let's get started. And they're like, oh, okay. So it helps. All right. Next. I've also seen lack of providers from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds. And this has a lot to do with it. It has been proven by studies that people actually feel more comfortable when they have someone that's of their same racial or ethnic background. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be of the same to be culturally competent, because I have worked with diverse populations, and I just ask. I have to be humble enough to ask when I don't know something, and at the end of the day, I learn from them, and I have had to refer. When they don't feel comfortable, we refer, and we look for a better option. But if you don't have the access to a diverse population as therapists, people are not going to go. And lack of culturally competent providers. Everybody can be culturally competent. It's just a matter of us actually putting in the effort. And actually, lack of cultural competence results in worse outcomes. I have seen clients go to therapy, and because the therapist wasn't culturally competent, the client ended up worse. I'm trying to hurry up, because I have like 2 minutes. So as a client, make sure you advocate for yourself. Please advocate for yourself. Use your words. If you're uncomfortable, let the clinician know. If they said something that offended you, use your words. Don't stay quiet, and advocate for better mental health. That is our job, to be your own advocates. I had to learn that, but it's hard, but it's not impossible. Don't give up. One negative encounter does not mean that all mental health professionals are the same. Like I told you, many of my clients had already come from other therapists, and so they didn't give up. They tried several times. I had to try several times. And I'm so glad I did, because once I found my therapist, I'm like, yay! Have an open mind. Many of us, we're gonna go walk in and do things we've never done. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I never grew up doing mindfulness. I was like, what? So when I went to therapy and they were like, let's do mindfulness, I was like, I was a therapist, by the way. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I was so resistant. So just be open-minded. Try the things that the therapist is telling you, and don't be ashamed. There's nothing wrong with going to therapy. I tell everybody I go to therapy. I'm like, yeah, I go to therapy. They're like, that therapist goes to therapy. I'm like, yeah, of course. You need to. Don't trust a therapist who doesn't go to therapy. All right, so this is a lot, and I'm just going to say a couple. So if you're a mental health provider working with minorities, please do not assume, okay? Be humble enough to ask. It's important that you ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. I ask all the time. Be aware of your own biases. Be careful. We all have them. And if you tell me you don't, I'll call you a liar. We all have biases. But be aware of them. Make sure you're aware of them, because the other person will pick it up. They will feel uncomfortable. So be aware of your microaggressions, please. Remember, it took a lot from that client to get there. So be patient and make it a safe space for them. And be prepared to get uncomfortable. Boy, I've gotten uncomfortable several times, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And they tell me, you're turning red. I'm like, I just don't know how to handle this. You know, like I'm like, okay, like, all right, let's talk about this, or this is out of my scope. So, and let's just ensure we're all trained health professionals that are culturally equipped and empathetic and non-judgmental, so we can understand and properly diagnose. Don't be minority blind. A lot of people, you know, they're well-intentioned, but they're like, oh, I just treat people. No, that's not it. We don't just treat people. And it's for our own, we don't want to get uncomfortable because who likes to be uncomfortable? But at the end of the day, you're just hurting that person because you're erasing part of who they are. If somebody looked at me and they're like, well, I don't see you as a Latina or as an immigrant or as a Lebanese woman, it would be erasing part of who I am. My history, my struggles, how hard it's taken to be where I'm standing, the racism we've encountered some bad racism, right, baby? Yeah. So don't do that. You're just hurting your client. You're hurting people. And hope. Remember, we're doing this for hope. And we all work together. The community, the mental health providers, everyone. We all have different paths and we all have different stories, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as long as we work together, we can provide hope. But we need to make sure that we're all like the kids were doing. We grab each other's hands and we go forward. Even if we're different, it doesn't matter. We're working for the same goal. A better country with better mental health, so that our children don't have to go through what we went through. Thank you, everyone.